Let's talk to Theo Usherwood, political commentator, because Donald Trump is still front and centre of all of the front pages this morning. Theo, very good morning to you.
A very good morning to you, Mike, yes.
I mean, I think the theme for me this morning is that Labour just don't seem capable of putting stories away. You know, this should not be still running on the front pages. You know, the idea that top aides of the Labour Party have gone to the Democratic National Convention earlier this summer when they were not in power should not be front and centre of the Times and the Telegraph this morning, but it is, partly because they've denied anything that has now turned out to be true.
Yes, this goes back to a post on LinkedIn, the jobs website, the employment website by Sophia Patel. Now, she's the Labour Party head of operations, and she posted basically a call to arms for former and current Labour Party activists to travel to the United States to campaign for Harris and the Democrats. Now, the rules are very clear in America. Mike, you cannot spend $1,000, anything over $1,000 on any one particular candidate. Otherwise, that amounts to foreign interference in an election. Now, what the really contentious bit of what Sophia Patel wrote when she wrote that advert on LinkedIn was, we can sort your accommodation. Right. Now, if the Labour Party is paying for accommodation or giving a benefit in kind for accommodation for those activists to go to America and have somewhere cheap to stay, then that would amount, you know, Trump may well make an argument that that would amount to a payment of over $1,000. Right. And that would be a breach of the rules. Now, the post, interestingly, has been deleted. That LinkedIn post has been deleted. But of course, Trump has made the point that, you know, the left, people have thrown up their arms when there's been Russian interference in the American elections or in the democratic process over there. And what's the difference here? Starmer's saying, well, we do this every year. But, you know, he has to, you know, now he's in government, now he's the prime minister. He's got to look ahead, Mike, to the relationship. And he could well be, you know, trying to forge that special relationship with Donald Trump and not Kamala Harris. Yeah. And this is the danger for Keir Starmer. He's allowed his team to sort of go into activist mode, saying, well, we've done this in previous years and we have a special relationship with the Democrats, the Labour Party, rather than thinking, actually, in the interests of the nation, do I just need to take a step back here and recognise that Donald Trump very soon may be the leader of the free world? America and Britain have always been tight. But if you're backing the other person, what do you expect to happen? Yes. He's hardly going to say, you know, he's hardly going to say, Keir Starmer, you're my friend, you're my ally. Let's kind of get together and solve the world's problems, is he? If Keir Starmer and his team in the Labour Party have suddenly gone off and also, it's not a brilliant look, is it, to be in power for less than 3 months and to already being the subject of legal action from the former President of the United States of America and possibly soon to be President again in a United States court, because technically speaking, that's where it could end up. Because according to the Telegraph, John Lee Howell, a man I've never heard of before, you may know these guys, and David Evans, two of the party's most senior officials, were given VIP access to the Democratic National Convention. Similarly, also, so was Morgan McSweeney, who the Labour Party have now admitted they paid his way to go there. So he did not go as a volunteer, which is what Steve Reed said to me yesterday when I interviewed him on College Green. Have a look at this.
Well, of course, it's up to people as private individuals to choose what they do with their own free time and their own free money. If people want to spend their holiday campaigning in elections in other countries, well, it's legal here, it's legal there, and it happens both way around.
Yeah, but it's quite serious, is it not, for a potential president of the United States of America to file, you know, a legal action against the Labour government of this country? I mean, it's quite a big deal, isn't it?
I suspect he's more looking for a headline than a prosecution, because it's entirely legitimate for individuals to choose how they spend their free time and their money, and that's what's happened in this case. The Labour Party itself was not involved in organising or funding those trips. It's individuals choosing to do what they want with their own time.
Oh dear, oh dear. I'm sorry, Steve. It turns out that Morgan McSweeney's trip was paid for by the Labour Party. So he's wrong. He may not have known that he was wrong. I hope he didn't know that he was wrong, because otherwise that would make him a liar. But so he just maybe doesn't know. But the point is, Labour did pay for Morgan McSweeney to go, and they may have paid for other people to go, and that is where the problem lies.
Yes, and of course, they're now making the argument that when Morgan McSweeney went to the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, he didn't provide Harris with any advice.
Right.
But we know that there are close links, and that, you know, the Harris campaign was looking at what happened in July in this country and how Labour managed to secure that victory.
Right.
It is, you know, they want to know how to win, and they want to know how to win in the way that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party won power going back to the beginning of July.
Yes.
So the argument now is, actually, yes, Morgan McSweeney did go. He was paid for by the Labour Party to go. And of course, at that time, he was a political director of political strategy in Number 10 rather than chief of staff, because since they've booted out Sue Gray from that job. But so now they're saying, well, actually, he was just in Chicago and that he was having, you know, he didn't provide any advice to the Harris campaign, because, of course, if they had paid for his flight to go to America and he had provided advice, then that would be an exceptionally bad look. And I mean, that would you know, according to Trump, and I'm not an expert on the minutiae of US electoral law, but going by what we understand already, that would amount to what you would think, or certainly Trump would allege, that there had been a breach of law had he provided, or if it can be proven that he had provided advice.
And once again, it's a terribly bad look for Keir Starmer, a man who is currently thousands and thousands of miles away, when there's quite a lot of action going on back here, not least the Chris Cabba situation, not least the Rachel Reeves, you know, prelim up to the budget. She's apparently going to go to an IMF meeting as well, so both of them are going to be out the country. When people are talking about pension raids, people are talking about taxes, people are talking about, you know, being attacked as middle-class, you know, private sector workers who are going to get absolutely flummoxed by what Rachel Reeves has in mind for them.
Yes, there are some rumblings. You're quite right to pick up on this, Mike. There are lots of rumblings now about the fact that Keir Starmer likes to get in the air miles. He likes to go abroad on these foreign trips rather than dealing with the much thornier issues going on here at home. You know, we're less than a week out now from the budget, and it does look to be already to be quite a divisive budget between the public sector and the private sector.
Right.
So we're talking about a raid on, or a change in national insurance contributions for employers. And of course, the danger is that if you put up the cost of those contributions for employers, they're going to pass that on to their staff in the form of pay freezes and potentially cutting back on their pensions contributions. But if you work in the public sector, from what we understand, you're going to be okay, because they're going to basically give the NHS, the police, you know, the police forces up and down the country, civil servants in Whitehall, they're just going to give them £5 billion back so that they don't have to do those things. So actually, you know, when you're looking at this, are people who work in the private sector, and we're talking about the shopkeepers, we're talking about the small business owners, we're not talking about rich people, Mike.
No.
These aren't millionaires. These aren't people on six-figure salaries. These are people who are struggling to get by, plumbers, plasterers, tradespeople. You know, they're going to now potentially see, you know, if they employ a handful of men or women, they're going to see their cost of employing those people. If Keir Starmer is putting up those national insurance contributions, as Rachel Reeves is putting up those national insurance contributions on employers, that's going to become more expensive for them. And that means they're less likely to take people on, which is going to hit economic growth. And Keir Starmer, of course, is in Samoa, insisting that this will be an unashamedly pro-business budget. But that remains, you know, I think it's up to businesses to decide whether it's going to be a pro-business budget. I don't think most businesses,
because let's face it, I was listening to Peter Cardwell yesterday afternoon, who's in for Jeremy Kyle on Drive, and he was saying that, you know, the vast majority of businesses in this country employ between 1 and 7 people. You know, it's small and medium-sized businesses that are the backbone of the business community in this country. It's not, you know, the Amazons of this world. It's not the multinational global sort of companies. It's more small business, mom-and-pop businesses, they call them in America, who are going to be absolutely terribly badly affected by all of this. And I don't see how you're doing good for business if you're making business pay more to the government in tax.
Yes, and you know, Oliver Dowd and the Deputy Prime Minister raised this in the House of Commons yesterday because, of course, Keir Starmer was away, so there wasn't PMQs, it was deputy PMQs, and he asked Angela Rayner whether those 5 million small business owners accounted to being working people. We got a lot of, you know, bluster back from the Deputy Prime Minister about the Tories crashing the economy. It all being, you know, the illusion was it was all, you know, what she was, you know, trying to get across was it was all Liz Truss's fault. You know, that was 2 years ago.
Right.
Labour are in charge now, and they've got to make some really tough decisions about if they want to fill this black hole that they say is now £40 billion in terms of, £22 billion black hole, and if they want to increase spending in departments and the NHS and so forth, they're going to find £40 billion through, tax rises or spending cuts. They're in charge now, and we didn't get an answer from Angela Rayner as to who she thinks a working person is, who's going to be hit. And, your listeners can deduce from that, but actually they're quite nervous about defining a working person, because there are going to be some people who work in the private sector who are going to struggle.
And they made a big deal about that whole phrase, didn't they? Because they kept repeating it over and over again, working people. We are not against working people. We are making a vow now not to raise taxes for working people. And it turned out that once the definition actually fell out of the tree, working people for them were people who had no savings whatsoever, were probably earning somewhere between the average middle market wage of about £30,000 and didn't really have any savings and didn't really have any idea how they would pay for anything if they lost their job. I've got the Angela Rayner clip, I think, from Prime Minister's questions. Have a look.
Mr. Speaker, what is the Deputy Prime Minister's definition of working people?
Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, first of all, let me start by welcoming the honourable gentleman to his new place. Today is our first exchange, Mr. Speaker, since he pushed for a July general election. And if his own side hasn't offered him a peerage, I certainly would have. And Mr. Speaker, the definition of working people are the people that the Tory party have failed for the last 14 years.
Yeah, so that's not really an answer to that, but quite funny from Angela Rayner, I must say. She does have a certain charm about her. Let me move on to one final thing, and it's the front page of The Sun this morning, because more accusations of Labour government being a nanny state government. A ban on disposable vapes is coming on June the 1st. I mean, I'm not one of those people that spends any time vaping. I used to smoke, I don't do it anymore. They say they're going to have new laws prohibiting the sale of disposable vapes from June the 1st. Is it possible to ban them? Will it work? Is there any point to it?
So this is, we go back to this thing where I think what's happening in the government at the moment, especially in the Department for Health, is you've got a number of officials in there who are starting to float ideas that, just get signed off. The ministers just think, actually, this is a really good idea. It will improve the health of the nation. It will save the NHS money. But I think politically, I think there's a problem for Labour. They're not quite aware of where many of their own voters are, particularly in the Midlands and the north of England. You've got Nigel Farage's Reform Party breathing down their necks. And if, the Labour Party come in and start being killjoys, potentially, and saying, actually, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do the other, and we want you to be much healthier. I think Labour, those people who entrusted Labour saying, well, actually, I didn't vote for this. If I want to have, and I'm talking specifically, of course, about the ban on smoking outdoors in pub gardens, restaurants, that type of thing. These measures, and there was even an idea that was floated at the Labour Party conference of reducing the opening hours of pubs in order to cut down on excessive alcohol consumption that was being mooted in the Department for Health to try and reduce the bill for the NHS. But politically, I think the Labour government needs to be aware that actually, if there's too much nanny state, then many of their voters will feel that actually they didn't vote for this, and they do want to actually, Labour to concentrate on the things that for them really matter in terms of getting, more money in their back pockets. We speak, of course, about the budget as well. So I think there will be, Labour can keep on with these, these ideas can keep on coming out of the Department for Health. But I think there are also those potentially in number 10, Mike, who realise that if they're going to secure a win at the next general election, or indeed have any hope of winning the next general election, then they really need to focus, the Labour government really needs to focus on the things that matter to people, whether it's the waiting times in the NHS, whether it's, get more money in people's back pockets, and rather than sort of fretting about ideas around the fringes that might be, important to senior civil servants. And I think there is a danger that if they get too bogged down in these ideas of banning everything, that many of their voters will turn around and say, well, actually, not for me, mate.
Yeah, absolutely right. Theo, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Theo Usherwood, political commentator there.